With that, we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Julia, for those who don't know, and I'll be facilitating this session on the fund today and just giving, like I said, a lot of updates on what's been happening as well as getting everyone's thoughts on how we should move forward. So I want to do a really quick round of intros or just like a check-in with folks, and or maybe we'll just do a handful and have people share in the chat. But I want to know what is something that you've done for yourself today. So if you haven't and you want to, you can change your name to reflect your pronouns so people know those. But you're welcome to state your name and then something that you did for yourself today. So I'll start. My name is Julia, and something I did, I made a really good quesadilla earlier. I just had a bunch of leftovers in my fridge, and I was like, what am I going to eat? And then I was like, I'm going to make the best quesadilla ever. And it was pretty good. It wasn't the best, but so I won't make everybody do this, but if you would like to jump in and just say hi and share something you did for yourself, or if you would like to type in the chat, I would love to hear from you.
So I'll jump in. My name is Sandy, and one thing that I did for myself today was I painted my toenails, which I don't like to do, but I did it because it made me be still. So that's something I did for me today. I'm passing it on to the next person. Somebody else jump in.
Today, oh yeah, my name's Brianna, she, they. I watched some Real Housewives of Atlanta, and it's just great escapist reality TV, so that's something I did for myself today.
My name is Carmen, and something that I did for myself today is I took a leap of faith and created my LLC.
Oh shit, that's what's up. Got some claps there. I don't know if you see them. Who else wants to go?
I'll go. My name is Sarah, and this morning I had a big to-do list of things that I was going to get completed, and then my cousin called me, and I allowed myself to talk on the phone with him for about an hour, and it was outstanding. It was great. It was really nice.
Love it. Let's do like one more.
Here, I'll go. My name's Sarah. I go by Sarah Sun. I use she, they pronouns. And the thing I've done that's good for myself is I'm taking a walk right now, currently, this very moment with my dogs. And that's what I want to be doing. So.
Nice. Thank you. If you didn't share with the group and you feel comfortable sharing in the chat something you did for yourself today, love to hear it. So, okay, cool. So with that, I'm gonna move into, if we could share those slides and get into some data. So everyone here, welcome. If this is your first time joining a mutual aid thing, thank you for being here. I know it's not easy jumping into a room of strangers, but we're really glad you're here, and we wanna have this time to really share what's been happening with the fund. So as lots of people know, we've redistributed a crazy amount of money. I think over $450,000 over the last 6 months to over 700 people throughout the St. Louis region. So that's like a huge number. It's insane, and we wouldn't absolutely like. It came from thousands of people, everybody giving, you know, as little as $10 to over $50,000. So, you know, we're not an agency. I think a lot of people who interact with mutual aid are like, wow, you guys do so much. You have employees. It's like, we don't have employees. Like, we're not, you know, very, very few of us are paid anything, if at all, to do this. And we really do it because, you know, because we care about the community and we know that it's been a huge need and that there are people who have resources who want to share them, who actually willingly want to redistribute them in their community. So with that in mind, one thing that we've been doing is, I like your comment, Susanna. One thing that we've been doing recently is actually reaching back out to everyone who received from the fund and getting their feedback on some critical questions. We've been thinking about how to change and just noticing some kind of issues with how we originally started dispersing money, and we really wanted to get the community's feedback on those issues and to move forward and include the people, make sure that the people who are receiving funds are actually in decision-making, have decision-making power about what happens next. So that's kind of what this session is going to be about. And yeah, we can just get right into it. So let's go to the next slide. So this is our survey that we did. We had over, so what is that, 86 people. We actually still have some coming in, so more than that, who chimed in on this. And most, as you can see, the vast majority of them were folks who received from the fund. So we were really happy to get that. So we asked people, like, what's something that you learned from being part of St. Louis Mutual Aid? And I'll just read some of these, and then I would love to hear, there's actually 2 slides for this too. So we said how deeply people are suffering because of the pandemic and how quickly their needs can be met when held in community. Somebody said, the love is real, I'm worthy of it, no matter how broken I am. Someone said, I've learned how to get help instead of suffering, that everyone is important and to contribute to the community in one way or another. Miracles do happen. We had some to be more in solidarity. Next one. It was the first time I ever felt like I deserved to receive anything. Do folks who speak Spanish want to read the Spanish ones?
Sure. Okay. Do you want me to translate it in English? Or read it in
You
Spanish?
can read it first and then translate it.
Okay. Me importa porque dan mucha ayuda emocional y con los gastos por esta pandemia, al igual información muy valiosa de cómo seguir previniendo y estar salvo del virus. Gracias. It's important because they give much emotional assistance, and with the cost because of the pandemic, the information is also important to continue to prevent and stay safe from the virus. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, there's one more at the bottom too.
Pues que no estamos solos, que hay gente solidaria que apoya a quien lo necesita en algún momento por las circunstancias que se puedan presentar. That we are not alone, and that there are people in solidarity that assist when, to whom it's necessary in whatever moment for the circumstances that present themselves. Wow.
Also, our community is amazing and resilient. Together, we make truly impactful differences. So, would love to hear from other folks on this call, like what has been, what's something you've learned, or why is mutual aid important to you?
I can speak to that. For me, it gave me a sense of purpose and inspiration that everything that I've been dreaming can happen. We are a community that's better together. We can reconcile, we can heal. And it created a safety net. Like, I really realized that I was not alone.
Thank you. One more person?
I think that it's also important for people to see that, like, we don't necessarily need like politicians or government officials to come in and save us, that we, like, as a community, have all the resources we need to support each other.
Yes, I love it. So true. Well, Thank you for sharing, and feel free to type others if you think of it or if you want to share that way. So we also asked people what is something that they want to improve about mutual aid, or what are some things that, feedback to be better and grow. And so we talked, some folks were saying it would be really helpful if they just had 1 or 2 people they could kind of contact, or that was always checking in on them. Obviously more funds, I think we would all like that. Improving the ways of communicating, so cutting down on the number of emails or calls, and seeing what people need instead of having food they're going to throw away. Destiny, did you want to share your comment? You there? You can unmute yourself, but let's see. Okay, well, I'll read your comment for now. If you want to say hi later.
Can you hear me now?
Cool, yeah, you're good.
Okay. I said it made me feel not alone in knowing that I had people out here to help me get back on my feet.
Yeah, we neighbors, y'all. So this is up. I think there was another slide here too. So yeah, so getting aid to families who are in critical need immediately. We'll talk more about that. Something where people can make smaller recurring donations, I guess, for individuals. Would like to say thank you to the people that make it possible. Response time was something that several people mentioned, and then just, wanting to make sure that we're checking in on people as much as possible. So those are some of the things that feedback we got from folks of how we can improve. Let's move on. Or I guess, well, we can spend some time here too. Does anyone have other thoughts, or has anyone had ideas on how to implement some of these things or tried them out? Yeah, Sandy said we need to reach out to folks falling through the cracks.
I think some of these comments are where like the pods can help out more, like if there's more communication between the different groups within mutual aid, then I think some of like people falling through the cracks will get picked up by the pods doing a lot of the relationship work and checking in on neighbors.
I agree with what Ms. Dessa just said, and that's why I asked Yanni to plug me in with my pod in my community. When you build relationship with people that you're directly connected to in your community, and they know you're coming back every week, that gives us that data that we need to see what's really going on in the gap. Because for me, we're not really trying to give people fish. We're trying to teach people how to fish, how to become sustainable in their community. So if we have more direct contact with people on a regular basis, that circle of trust gets stronger, and they really want to talk, and then they become vested and committed to doing the internal change and the change in the community. So I think it's something we need to really evaluate, how we bring those pods and like really birth them, get them out of incubation and full blown working.
Yeah, love it. Other thoughts? Yeah, Laura?
I'm struck by 2 of these comments, that kind of connect to this, like the gap, because the people I have the closest contact with are folks who probably put themselves on the sheet, the Google sheet in the early days. And so their point of connection was whoever distributed funds to them, or who was the donor directly, and didn't necessarily ever get woven back into a pod. So this idea of like small recurring donations, that's like interesting that came up, because I do have a couple people who reach out to me weekly, every other week, asking for different amounts of funds. And it would be interesting to spend some time thinking about, like, is that one of our practices across the fund? And the other is like, I selfishly, I'll say for the financial solidarity team, like it really makes me just have like heart feels, big heart emoji to be like, I'd like to say thank you to the people that make it possible. I've been like
moving in my to-do list for a week now that it's time for me to update all the people that I've recruited to give. And I wanted to wait till this conversation today, but even just like one phrase like that, like brings that connection more so, which is what I really want to do. So that just meant a lot to me that that came through the survey.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm happy to, I just put the link for this slide in the chat. And so it has like a full summary of the feedback and should be viewable. And, you know, we keep all the information anonymous. So.
Oh, great. I'm going to link it into the notes.
Yes. Great. All right. Let's move on here. So yeah, so some questions and concerns, I think things that have come up again and again over the last few months that we really want to be mindful of. And, you know, one thing I really want to stress on people, like I think a lot of us are used to being part of groups or organizations where things are really fixed and where there's like a really clear, there's like really strong rules. And I think just making it clear to people that like the way we've been doing things is something that we sort of created in the moment and we really want to change as we go. And so at this point, you know, anything is up for grabs. Like we could decide today or tomorrow that we wanted to completely change the way we do things, and that would be fine. So I don't want people to feel like because we've been doing things a certain way, it has to be the way that we continue going forward, but we need your help to make it happen. So that's why we're here. So kind of multiple things that have come up. One is like giving multiple times. You know, people, I don't know if any of us thought that this was going to last to the extent that it did. It's been 6 months, over 6 months. So, you know, emergency support doesn't necessarily take into account that people are going to have the same issues every month. People are going to continue to be in the same situations. So there are a lot of people in our network who received support and then needed it again. And we didn't really have a good way to address that or to say, you know, when should we prioritize giving to somebody new versus to someone who received before and still needs support. So we need that kind of, we need to have clarity on that. The other thing is the limit. We had decided kind of, you know, a couple months in that we would give no more than 1,500 at one time. And so that's another thing that, you know, again, is like, maybe we need to reevaluate that, maybe we don't. And then emergency stuff, you know, there's so many people who, you know, needing $200 tomorrow is very different than needing $1,000 in a few weeks. You know, if you're in a crisis situation and the money that you need needs to come now in order for you to get out of that crisis, it's just a very different, we need to be able to respond quicker, and we haven't been able to do that. So those are 3 things I think that came up consistently that have been coming up that I want to address or just talk a little bit more about tonight. Does anyone have any comments or just want to be like, yes, I totally agree with, you know, this thing?
So, Julia, this is Sandy, and I can't stay long because I have another meeting, but I wanted to throw out maybe the way that our group is set up, because there are times when people need something right away, or those people that are falling through the cracks are going to be in such worse situations. We had an example of that with somebody in our group that was in an abusive situation, had money and fed her 6 kids for that day, but had no other resources and was going back to the abusive situation. We don't have time to fill out, you know, a week's worth of paperwork and wait 2 months in that situation. It's imperative. So the way our Native Women's Care Circle is set up in a very decolonized way, where when something's important like that, you go to 3 of the elders in our case, and you tell them what's happening. And if all 3 of them agree, you know, if you go to 4, 3 out of the 4 agree, but you have consensus that that person needs help and you help them. So sometimes I think we need to remember that we are not an agency and we don't have to jump through those hoops. The flip side of that is we can't fix the world but we can put out a lot of the fires to keep the world from burning down. So my point is that we look at ways to help those people that are falling through the cracks, that don't need to wait in a 2-month line, but we also help the folks that are in the 2-month line. And that was my thought.
Yeah. So really quick, Sandy, are you kind of suggesting to have, you know, do the process that we've been doing, but to kind of add, you know, a small council of people that would also be able to kind of triage or approve emergency funds?
I think it's imperative because we've got, in December, we're going to have people that may be evicted into the wind.
Absolutely.
They're already going to be in the shelters. That's an example. So if we can help someone to get a job and keep their apartment in November, that saves us from having to do a big thing in December. So I think we need to have some kind of a system, a core that takes care of some emergencies, and they've got to be answerable to the group, but still a core that people can go to. That was my thought. And I hate to say this, but I have a 6 o'clock meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye. Thank you so much, Sandy.
If I can add to what Ms. Sandy just said, Julia, and try to cover what Yanni was asking in the chat, that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you implement something like that, and then you put that wraparound support, whether it's the person in the pod that is supporting that person in the gap, and always having a level of communication with that person. Yes, there may be a level of codependence for a season, but we're trying to lift people up and out and over. We're trying to take them from codependence to independence, and they may have to come back in the gap and get some more assistance, and we're always gonna be there. But if we create that bump stop right there, we are proactively helping my people to learn how to fish. I don't want you to keep giving me fish. I want to learn how to fish. That's what I mean when I say that.
Yes.
Thanks for clarifying. I think we talk about like how we all need each other and we're all we need in mutual aid. So the idea that like we're not codependent, I was like, but we are, but like not in that extent. Like we want people to be independent to a base level, and ultimately, like you said, we're all okay, interdependent. Yeah, not codependent. That's helpful nuance.
Yes. Really quick, we just had, I believe, Maria who joined, and I just want to make sure that we can provide interpretation for her if needed. So, Susanna, or I guess Susanna's already on the channel. Sarah or Nachelle, do you all mind helping Maria navigate that?
No sé cómo usarla, pero hay un canal de traducción si usted necesita español. La traductora se llama Susana. Y how do you do it again, Julia?
There's a button that says interpretation at the bottom. I think it should come up now. It says English and Spanish interpretation available. So if you click on interpretation and you select.
Is that going to be the same on an iPhone? Because this one says iPhone.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know.
En su pantalla hay un botón que se dice interpretación o se dice, traducción. Y eso es como usar el canal de traducción si usted necesita esto en español.
So maybe she's able to find it. I'm gonna message Susanna. Sarah, I guess we can just check on that, make sure that she's all right. Okay, so yes, I love that discussion, and Carmen, thank you for clarifying all of that, and for Sandy for putting that suggestion. Actually, that was there was a specific person who gave feedback that like referenced having a council of elders.
Julia, would you mind? I don't feel like I caught. Let me tell you what I caught for the suggestion, the notes, because I feel like I may have missed some nuance because I got swept into the conversation. Sandy suggested that we form an emergency giving fund or council so that we can triage and address immediate needs. It could be a council of elders.
Yes. Yeah. That seems good. Okay. Cool. Are we okay to move on?
I actually have a question and concern that isn't caught here. Something we've talked a few times about in the financial solidarity team is how some other mutual aid funds we've learned about elsewhere have really specific about their intended goals of who they're supporting in terms of supporting Black folks, people of color.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. That's part of the feedback.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I think that's the next one or something. Okay. So this is a question about should we prioritize people who haven't, it's related, like to who haven't received funding yet. Most people said yes. Pretty significant people said like it depends on people's situations, which shouldn't necessarily matter if they've received or not. We should just look at, you know, how they're doing. So the next slide has some more specifics on what people said on that. So could we go to the next one? There we go. So a lot of people were saying something along the lines of like prioritize for these situations or, you know, emergency basis. Some people are gonna keep having needs. People who have more financial problems. And then someone suggested maybe we have a set number that's for new people and then a set number for folks who have already received. So yeah, so kind of along those lines. You can go ahead and move on here.
What did that one in Spanish say?
Mostly it's like people with more financial problems.
Got it.
All right. So the next question was about, yeah, same stuff. So people have a way who've already received to make another request, and overwhelmingly people said yes. So definitely something for us to, yeah, figure out a system for. So next one here. Okay, so this is the one that was actually, I think, the most difficult to answer and really gets at what you were just mentioning, Laura. So should we prioritize specific groups of people? If we are saying we have emergency pool, that's a little bit different, but this is around like, are we prioritizing Black folks? Are we prioritizing immigrants? Are we prioritizing people who are facing eviction? Or, you know, it could be based on identity or based on your situation. But this was a, you know, it's not a clear answer here. Almost exactly split between yes and no from people who gave. And so we're going to have some more discussion on that. But there's some detail as well.
Can I ask a question, Julia?
Sure.
I think going back to the values and everything we discussed in the previous meeting, wouldn't we not prioritize anybody because we help everybody?
Yeah, so you can see sort of what people have said on, you know, what specifically people said, but basically the folks who said no are pretty much along the lines of exactly that. So.
And I want to illustrate where it's not necessarily a total binary. Like one system we talked about before when we first visited this question of how to distribute the money is like, you can weigh people's requests based on identity without being like exclusively for people of certain like identities or situations, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I could elaborate if you're interested, but like there's some middle ground, but ultimately, yeah, it's a binary of like, do you consider identity or any situational factors or no?
So let's take a look at that. So for the folks who said no, oh, wait, there should be another slide in there. There we go. Okay, yeah. So Carmen, yeah, basically what you were just saying. So what's important is that the needs taken care of should go to anybody. No one's better than anyone else. We prioritize. You know, people have to be honest in requesting. Everyone's in need. Let's see. Yeah, it's a pandemic and everyone's affected. All families are affected, whoever needs help. So that's kind of, you know, what a lot of folks were sharing. And then the next slide, I accidentally put the evictions in Hassan, but this is sort of a list of folks that came up, people who did say yes, who they would feel like really should be prioritized. So people who are at risk for exposure, homeless, unhoused folks came up a lot, elderly, other people who are more vulnerable, people who are facing eviction, elderly, disabled, mothers with small children should go to families who are in danger of starving and or losing their home. Immigrants, people who didn't receive government assistance is also something that came up quite a bit. So yeah, would love to get other reactions to this quickly, and then I would like to break out into small groups. So, okay, actually let's move on here and then we'll come back to this. So, and then again, if you want to follow, if you're like want to sit with some of this more, you're welcome to check this out. So here's the slide, and you can read through everything on your own as well. So people, we said, do we need have a minimum maximum, or should we distribute the same to every person? Most people agreed that we should continue to ask what folks need. I think that's the last.
What's the third option there? It's like, I don't know.
The third option is like they didn't fill it out. They just skipped that question.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made that clear. Yeah, and then here's just some other random ideas that came up. So taking into account the number of people in a household, following up with families, and you know, especially after time, seeing what's happening in their situation, or other resources they might need. So that pretty much sums up the overall feedback that we got, and I want to take some time for people to react and have some discussions. And I think particularly these questions here is like, how do we prioritize, or do we not prioritize emergency situations, particular people with particular identities, or people who are in particular situations? So would love to spend some time for people to like react to all of this information, look over it yourself. What did you like? What did you not like? And see if it's possible within your group. I'm going to break people up into groups of 3. And see if you can come up or agree on, you know, at least 2 ideas or themes to bring back to the rest of the group. So I'm gonna do that now here. Any questions before we sort into rooms? And we'll do that for let's say about 15, give you guys 15 minutes. Maybe we're going to 7. Yeah, okay. Great. Any questions? Everybody okay? All right. Do this here. Okay. Here we go. Hi, Diana. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello. Now I took it off. Hello. Hi, Julia. How are you?
Good. Did you just join or have you been on for a second?
We just joined.
Okay, cool. So you missed we had a little presentation. Hold on 1 second. So there was a little slide that I was going over that has basically we're going through feedback that we've received about the mutual aid fund. And we did a survey of all the people who received and got their feedback on like what was helpful, what was, what we need to improve. And so right now we're just talking about like basically like what are some different ways that we can adapt the fund in certain ways, like to meet people's situation. So one thing that came up was wanting to have a better way to get funds to people who are in emergencies, because right now we have it kind of like a first come, first serve basis. And so whenever we're backed up, we can't really meet a person's need until like way after that they've requested. So
Okay.
wanting to find a better way to do that. And then another thing is just like trying to consider whether or not, does it make sense to prioritize people with certain identities or people who are in certain situations and stuff like that. So all of that is a little tricky. But yeah, if you want to take some time to just look over that slide maybe, and then let me know if you have any reactions or questions. And then.
Okay. There were only 3 of us on the call?
Well, we're in breakouts right now, so everybody else.
Oh, I see. Oh, thank you, Julia. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Julia, I'm coming from the other side of the coin, where the reason I'm on this summit, that we're on the summit, is because we signed up. We told Kendra weeks ago that we would drive, or we could have 1 day a week we could do groceries, and we took some groceries actually to Mary, took some dinners to Mary, who was on last night in Spanish Lake. And I said, okay, we could do this every Friday and then we never got calls. So I think there's an organizational piece with the volunteers as well. And I know Kendra's been overwhelmed.
Well, yes, that's part of it.
Trying to work on that.
And then another part of it is like the whole reason we had this summit was just that we needed a break. So we actually, starting the beginning of last week, everybody took a break from distribution. And then this week is focused on the summit, so we can actually like restructure some of the things that we've been doing. So there has been part of the reason why there's been a pause in communication is just because there's been a pause overall in lots of things. And then hopefully after tomorrow with these sessions, we'll have some more clarity on organizational structure. Because up until now, there has not been a structure for anything that we do. It's like all whenever.
Right. I figured that out after listening the 2 nights. And then Kendra had alluded to that as well. So thank you. And I just want to affirm the 2 days spent in relationship building and not jumping into the tasks. So I just want to affirm that you're doing what you say you want to do.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks.
So
I can take a look. You're welcome, Julia. I can take a look at the Google Docs. How?
Oh, there
How
should
do I?
In the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's a link in there.
Okay, I can see the class. Click on that. It'll take me. Okay.
Thank
I can
you.
see it. Thank you.
No problem. Chime in if you have questions.
Okay, so I'm still connected to you. Okay.
Yeah, I'll stay in here in case anybody joins late and needs to be assigned into it. And if you want to join a breakout room.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate the help.
No problem.
Okay. Did you receive the report? Okay, so of all the people that recorded, 77 received help. Okay, what is something you learned? How deeply people, can you read it?
Mm-hmm.
How deeply people are suffering. You can see it? Okay. Wow.
Miracles do happen.
Wow.
What's the last one say? It's in Spanish.
It's Spanish. To be solid, to be so. Probably the first time I ever felt like I deserved to receive anything.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Work together.
Okay, what would improve? I would routinely see what I needed. More funds. Mm-hmm. Improve outreach to people without technology. You want Brussels sprouts?
Mm-hmm. And some beans up there, and some popcorn, so I'm fine. And that big lunch. There's a big moving sandwich and a milkshake.
Getting aid to families who are in critical need. Response. It was a long time before I heard anything.
That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. I had $33,000. Do you think funds should prioritize people who haven't received any funding yet? What would you say to that?
Well, they would not help. I mean, they haven't received anything. I don't think help them is. Then recurring, I mean, rather we realize that they're in that shape, they're going to always have recurring debt, recurring needs. What happened the first time to give them some sense of hope? We're walking and talk with them and helping them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Funds should be prioritized for utilities. And those who have not received funding for things. Where's Rick?
He's a little
Jay told me he ordered more bike parts.
we had a bike accident with it.
Mm-hmm.
Wrecked his bike. I don't know how he did it. And something when he took it in, whoever where he took it to him said, "Hey, Rick!
And just walk over there just to say.
Anyway, never took it and said it wasn't together. Hey, Rick! Hey, Rick!
We're in breakouts right now, so here while people are talking in their breakouts. But I can catch you up.
Lexi, I'm in and out. What's up?
So we're talking. We did a bunch of feedback from people. We had like a little survey for everybody who received money from the fund. So we were just going through that data together, and then people are sort of reacting and discussing it now. So yeah, we've just talked a lot about like, you know, needing to switch things up a little bit, especially so yeah, I mean, if you want to, I don't know if you prefer if I just like talk at you, or there's like a little slide if you want to like look over what people said, how people felt, but either way.
I mean, your speaking voice is fantastic. I'm open to that. And reading, I would prefer not to read, I guess. If I'm,
All right, cool. Well, I'll put it here if you want to reference it later, but basically, people gave really great thoughts on different questions we had about like, should we, prioritize specific groups of people? That was like actually the most unclear one. Like there was like an even split of like 36 people and 38 people who said like, yes, we should prioritize particular groups of people or like with identities or who are in specific situations. And then like half people said like, no, we need to be open to everyone. So it's an interesting debate, I think. And then I think a lot of people are making it pretty clear that we need to find a way to respond quicker to like emergency situations. So for folks who like, where $200 today matters much more than like, 500, whatever, 1,000 2 months from now, finding a way to move faster. So Sandy was on here earlier and she suggested like creating a council, maybe a council of elders like they do in the Native Women's Care Circle, or some other type of council that would be able to like respond to emergency situations. So that was an idea that came.
why does it need to be elders?
Oh, it doesn't have to be. That was just like, she was talking about the Native Women's Care Circle and like indigenous practices. So she was saying
that the rapid response is elders?
That she was talking about how the Native Women's Care Circle has a council of elders that if there's emergency situations that need responding to, then they are consulted. And so she was saying that as a model or as a suggestion.
Gotcha. Thank you. Great. How many people are here?
There's about 18 folks. There's like 6 breakouts right now. So come back in 2 minutes.
And then what else is there?
You mean like content-wise?
Yeah, just sharing out.
Yeah, I think I asked folks to react to the feedback and then also to try and come up with like if they can agree in their breakout group on like 2 or 3 ideas to share back with the group, and that way we can kind of distill those. And my hope is that at the end of this meeting we'll have at least a handful of people who are down to kind of become like a core, like a little mini council that can make decisions.
Cool.
How did it work with the Sweet and Fun, like with you all deciding, prioritizing who got what?
We really, I mean, yeah, it was kind of like who picked up the phone, honestly, on our stuff, some of it. But we did like highlight very specific, like Black, trans, unhoused, and sex workers. And like undocumented folks, but most people didn't say. I actually don't know if I put that on there.
Cool. So those were your main areas?
Yeah, I think it was like sex work, unhoused, and then trans and Black.
So was it like people had to fit into any of those categories and they would like definitely be given funds, or was it more?
It was more like it was more just at the in the home stretch when I could have applied for outside funding, but then George Floyd happened, so like everything just shifted, and was killed. I mean, and then we said it was like, for people who are, I guess it's kind of like 2 or more, kind of like 2 or more of those things. I don't know. It was like less people, so I think it worked, but yeah, a little council that meets, every, I don't know. The emergency stuff is tricky, but we had that every Saturday meeting and it was fine. So
that's cool.
But we didn't do as much follow-up, or like have as many people, so. But you've been rocking over here.
Thanks. I'm really happy with this.
Yes, I love seeing Julia happy. Do you plant a fall garden?
No, I put some seeds in, but some of them have lived and some of them haven't. So Madison strategizing on what we want to plan for real.
Did we start the thing at the Sun Center?
Well, we cleared it. I think the idea is more so for the spring. So we just put stuff down so we can kill all the grass and stuff in there and get it ready. But maybe we can try and do something for the fall too.
Ready. Welcome back, y'all. I'm not trying to co-facilitate, it just happens. I'm sorry.
How was y'all's discussion, Carmen?
I think I'm a firecracker, so I left people with things to think about and questions, but it was good. I explained my thoughts on interdependent versus codependent more, and like why we need to give people like in a unit. So I hope they understood.
What's up? Cool. Is everybody back? I think so. Yeah. All right. Great. Well, let's hear from folks. Remember, I wanted to try and like summarize whatever you talked about into, 2 or whatever, more is fine, but some basic ideas that you felt like people really agreed on. So
let's start first. My group, we talked about basically giving people what they're asking for instead of just giving them money all the time. If someone needs help, like give them what they're asking for. If they say, hey, I'm looking for a job, that's like you help them get a job. It's not, let me get you some money, because if they keep getting money, they just gonna feel like they can keep sitting down on their ass not doing anything. And if you keep giving it to them, they're not gonna wanna try, because they know every time it is gonna get given.
Thanks for that. And then any others from your group or any other ideas y'all talked about? Anyone else in that group want to share something y'all talked about or agreed on?
I don't know if we necessarily agreed on a whole lot. Like we just really had an open conversation where we have to continue it. Like I think it just got started.
I got you. Cool. Thank you.
Maybe I'll say one more thing too. We also, we talked about just that efforts to help folks in the community should be coming from the community, should be coming from that, from the neighborhood. How do we do a better job of getting the resources to the folks that are in the neighborhood? And yeah.
Next.
I can go. So the 2 things that seem to pop up a lot, our group talked a lot about sort of prioritizing emergencies. So one of the first things it seems we all touched on is that we liked Sandy's idea of having like the like council for those like split second whatever decisions, but then also like when someone calls a hotline or just comes to us, like we should have some definition of what's an emergency, so that things are relatively consistent. But then also things like, I know one thing we talked about is if everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. So really sort of figuring out like, what is that? Where's our line? Not necessarily to exclude people, but also just for like transparency. So if someone asks like, why didn't I get this money, or what happened? I needed this tomorrow, or XYZ, like we can say, this is what happened. We talked a lot about like, how do we define emergency? Do you define it by time? Like when do you need it? Do we define it by what do you need it for? And then also, how do we stop it from turning into prying into people's lives so they feel like they need to prove to us they deserve money? And then the next thing we talked about was, sort of, because one of the concerns we had was, if someone calls and they say it's not an emergency, like I can wait 3 weeks, but then we like burn through the money for everyone who needs money tomorrow. By the time that 3 weeks person comes up, there's no money left, and now they're in an emergency. So like seeing if there could be kind of like maybe to what Laura was talking about, but like Dessa mentioned like maybe some sort of fund or some sort of fundraising specifically for like rapid response. Whether it's, you know, we've got a group of people who can cash out someone immediately, or we've got a pot of money that's specifically for these people need this now, but we also don't want to, you know, leave the people who aren't in emergencies out to dry. So that, you know, they said they could wait 3 weeks to get this rent money, but 3 weeks has come and there's no money and now they can't pay the rent. So those are the two sort of like main conversation points we had. And you all, I think Chris and Dessa, if you want to, if there's anything I missed.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Who else?
Yeah, so my group, we just kind of parsed through some of the pros and cons of prioritizing like based on identity, and we talked a little bit about the idea of, I guess, of prioritizing people's needs based on like axes of oppression, but then there are also like some faults with that, obviously. So maybe using axes of oppression, but also taking other things in consideration, such as how much of an emergency it is. And we realized that that would be a very like highly human involved process. So just kind of like thinking through that. And then Ione also explained that there is a possibility of shifting more responsibility to the pods, but then there are some pods that are strong or better organized than others. So what would that exactly look like? And would it be a balance of letting the more organized pods handle themselves, and maybe if the less organized pods need more support, that coming from like a larger network, or the, you know, more of a core team or a group of elders that we discussed earlier. So and not much like specifically decided upon, but just some things that we kind of parsed through. And I'm also I'm from St. Louis originally, but I'm also a college student at WashU. And I was just saying how in terms of volunteers, we're like such a college town. There's a lot of like untapped resources in terms of getting college students involved in the process, since they do benefit so much from inhabiting St. Louis.
Thank you.
Yeah. We were, what's up, Laura? Were you?
I just needed a little clarification for the notes. Brianna, when you say that what you were proposing about prioritizing people in like a multi-variable way would be more human involved, did you mean that would take a lot of like people power, like a lot of kind of staffing on the side of the mutual aid network, or that it would be like more in line with what the previous group said about kind of like getting into people's business?
A little bit of both, honestly. Kind of digging in people's business, and it would just take more time.
Thank you.
What were you sharing?
Yeah, like building on that, the idea of like shifting it to pods or something was like, okay, so if we're trying to imagine what a more subjective process or like a flexible and variable process looks like that is more human involved, like how do you push that down into smaller groups of people so that it's like breaking a ton of work into smaller pieces of work? And so pods were the first thing I thought of, but that could like I don't know if Brianna just mentioned it. My attention span is like shorter than a squirrel's right now. But we also talked about like representation of like groups of people from a particular identity or situation, like kind of looking out for and representing that group. So like what would like the word used was a committee, but like whatever word you want to substitute of like Black people looking out for Black people within mutual aid, like who are making requests or something like that. But yeah, trying to explore possibilities. That was kind of what we had.
Great.
Hey, just building on everything I think that's really been said, I think some things that came up in our group, and if I missed it, Susanna jump in. Really, we talked a lot about the pods as well. So I don't know, this being my first day, I just want to, like, what folks were saying already was a lot of what we talked about. It was like the relationships that are built in the pods allow for us to have a better understanding of like what like needs are and how we can and have relationships. We also talked about like things that were lifted up around like skill shares or just being able to like identify, like saying like it's really evictions, if eviction is really important, then also then identifying what are all of the things around the eviction that may be important. So like we want to make sure there's money, and then are there other needs, and how can we then like resource or get folks, how people were saying, tap into resources or volunteers, like is there legal need involved, and like how can we look to folks for that. We talked about like childcare collective, and just also I think we had a lot of different things that I wrote notes, and I'm not sure I'm doing a great job communicating it, but really we talked a lot about like building community as the way of mutual aid, not so much specifically on like identity. I was curious around the data, and maybe it's not necessary or not, but on like the who said yes and who said no, I just had like a curious mind around like if there were particular identity of like folks reflected in the yes, we want to prioritize identities, and on the no, but that doesn't need to be answered. That was just something that came up while I was thinking. So did I get it? I feel like I missed a lot.
That was a good question, and I think there's some that we know and some that we don't, because we don't really, like, we haven't been really, demanding that information from people. So I think it would be hard to like know exactly who said what, because we haven't been telling everyone doesn't have to say what identities they are. So, but that's a good question. Who else?
Yeah, so in our group, we talked about a bunch of stuff, but some of the stuff we got out of it was, one, maybe having, similar to what other folks have said, including Michelle, two different pool of funds, one for emergency stuff and one for sort of what we determine as less emergent things. And maybe the emergency fund is not bounded by identity categories, but sort of the longer term support one is specifically for unhoused folks, Black folks, people of color, sort of what the group decides the boundaries of that wants to be. Partially through the thought that like emergency is emergency, and those are really scary in particular. But also to other folks' point, we didn't talk about what the boundaries of what an emergent situation or not emergent situation are. And the other thing we talked about was for the longer term or non-emergency things, maybe that discussion happens in a relationship. So either the pool of elders conversation, or if there's one person who sort of knows what's going on in a couple group, in a group of people, something like that, so that it's less like just a one directional relationship with the network. Maybe that's through pods.
Cool. Any groups that haven't talked yet? Kendra, I think you were in a group, right? No.
Yep. Yes. So we talked about kind of like prioritizing certain identities. The identities that we talked about were trans people, and also undocumented, and also unhoused, which is kind of what we've been prioritizing too. We talked about oftentimes that emergency situations do come up. One thing that I'd like to note, I have done a lot of distributions of these, and it seems like a lot of people that are in the most dire situations ask for the least amount of funds, and not always the people that are able to communicate that they have an emergency. It's hard to judge who is really in an emergency, and it's really subjective. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge that that's something that is extremely subjective, and that we'd have to, like, if we were going to prioritize an emergency, we'd really have to decide what that would look like. And then we also talked about potentially like raising the minimum for people that were ineligible for other resources. So yeah, so I personally would prefer not to do emergencies and prioritize based on you know, identities and based on people's you know, privilege. I think that it would make sense, and there's criteria is already available for those things. But yeah, and then we talked about raising the minimum for people who are undocumented, because there are a lot of people that are ineligible for CARES funding. There's a ton of organizations that currently have CARES funding for utilities and for housing, 3 months back, 3 months forward for rental assistance, but that does not apply to people that don't have Social Security numbers. So we talked about kind of potentially raising the minimum to meet the CARES like minimum, which would be $3,000. Yep, and that's about it for right now.
Cool. Anyone who didn't get a chance to share?
Julia, we were not in a small group, but and I apologize that we were a little bit late, but one of the reasons we were late is because a woman who was going to be on the call said, she called me and said she couldn't be on it. And she asked a question, how would mutual aid work if I'm shopping for someone and I'm bringing them groceries? And how does that be mutual if, and I thought it was an interesting question. And I said, well, you know, when I bring the groceries or when she brings the groceries, that maybe we could have a conversation or get to know, how do you build relationships when there's simply a task to do? And I don't have the answers for that. It's a question that that I think could be addressed in small groups, or, you know, how do we do that? So that's all. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're all here.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Can I answer that question? Or
go
what
ahead.
I do, Miss Diana, you know, when we go to the people's house and we drop off the food, they're always eager to talk. And although it hasn't happened, I told them, you know, I live in your community, because Kendra always gives me the people that live in my community. And I told them, you know, I'm hoping that I'm going to be your regular person that comes and supports you. And then I let them know what my telephone number is, and I tell them to lock that number in and to just reach back out to me if they want support. So I think that's the piece, the missing piece, is to just like add that added value to that conversation when you're talking to them. And then kind of understanding their case records, the information that we do have for them, and then updating that, like in documentation form. And that's how you begin to bring, should be, because I'm in their community.
Carmen, thank you. Thank you for that. I think that's a wonderful idea. And what happened when I went in was that it was pouring down rain, and this woman had no porch, and so we couldn't talk. It was pouring down rain, and I said to her, well, I hope I'll be back next week. And I haven't been back. But Carmen, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I appreciate that.
I'd like to add that, Deanna, that somebody challenged me one time whenever I said, you know, when our video said, you know, at any given time, someone has something to give and something that they get, something that they need, right? But from any interaction, we have something that we give and something that we're getting. So, I mean, whether that be that we want to build our community, whether that be wanting to give back, whether that be wanting to lift up other people, you know, I think from every interaction, from every conversation, we give and receive, right? So there is a mutuality in it. Maybe the mutuality doesn't look the same in every interaction, but there is a mutuality. But I think it's important to realize that you are getting something from that circumstance and what that is within yourself, you know, and so what does it give to you? And although it looks differently for every person, and, you know, maybe, you know, developing a relationship is certainly important, you know, as well. And in that, even in those short interactions, you are receiving something.
Thanks.
I just wanted to, point out that Laura asked Kendra, can you repeat the 3 identities you talked about
I got it.
prioritizing?
Somebody sent it to me in private chat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So we've got a few minutes left here, and I just want to figure out who wants to keep the discussion going. You know, to be totally transparent, like up until now, there's been sort of a financial team, and that's included with me and Laura and Yoni, mostly people, and Sarah Rose, like Michelle, and mostly folks who like have access to wealth and privilege, who've been fundraising and like trying to make sure that we're getting money for the fund. But because there haven't been big changes around the fund in the last few months, we've never had like a group of people dedicated to just deciding on what happens with the fund. So I'm really hoping that we can come out of tonight with, you know, even just a small handful of people who want to really think about this more and kind of take this discussion and move it forward and implement some changes. So yeah, who in this group wants to be part of that and has the energy to think about it more?
Can you ask that question again? Sorry.
Oh, just who's gonna keep this going? Who's gonna continue to? Who's gonna take all the thoughts we got today and make some kind of put it together and come up with some ideas?
I'd love to help build the council because I know a lot of people that have, you know, given and received to it, and I think that there's a lot of wonderful people in that community that we could lift up to put on a board.
And I would love to, I know this isn't specifically like the action item, but I'd love to like tap into, I guess, college, like getting more college students involved, since there is so much capacity there.
Cool, thank you.
I don't know who should like give my contact info to.
You can put it in the chat, or you can, yeah, and we'll add it to the notes as a follow-up.
I would be willing to be on a committee for the fund, but I'm not sure what amount of time we think it might take, over what amount of like months, and what we're looking for would be the best constellation of people. But I'm a definite maybe.
Yeah, I might put myself under similar, like as a.
Cut out. You cut out.
Nikki got muted.
Yeah, you got muted.
Or sorry, they got muted. Chris, did you mute on purpose?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Oh no. Yeah. I guess I could see it maybe there as well. It's kind of I'm kind of interested in seeing how we could put some of these recommendations into practice.
Any other folks, or even just if you want to say like, how would you like to contribute to any of the things we talked about today? That's also fine.
Julia, I remember you mentioning that there was a section in the survey for folks to say if they wanted to continue getting feedback about the fund. I'm happy to be a part of reaching out to those folks.
Yeah, that would be great. We did some follow-up today just to invite them to this. I think, a couple of folks came, but definitely there was like over, I think it was like 27 or 25 people who said that they wanted to be involved. So we should follow up with them for sure.
I would also be happy to join Sarah in the reaching out to people to get involved.
Nice. Okay, awesome. Any others?
Who is the
I'm curious if we'd be interested in, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Who was that I would also be interested with, Sarah?
Carmen. All right, cool.
I'm curious if we wanted to, so a lot of, we talked a lot about kind of like making sure that we prioritize people that are of the community and, keeping the power closest to the people that have received from the fund. Do we want to talk about prioritizing like people that have been on the phone? Do we want a percentage? What do you want to do there? Should there be a goal? I just want to make sure we bring that to the table. I don't know what the answer is, and I don't. But yeah, I just want to make sure that we talk about that part.
Yeah, I think the council itself definitely needs, this may be my personal opinion, but like definitely needs to be made up almost entirely or a vast majority of people who receive from the fund. So we need to figure out how that needs to happen and do follow up to do that.
What about making it a minimum of 80%? And then what about the opportunity? Could we have it be paid? So a lot of people that are in that community may want to be, it would be great if we could have it paid. So FTF is doing something that's paid and they have a great structure.
Right.
Would it be possible to do something that's like, even just like the meetings were paid or the time was paid?
Yeah, I think it's totally doable, and we should figure that out. And so for the folks who volunteered to help with this, I think there's still, like I said, like sort of like Nisha identified, like there's a lot of follow-up work, there's a lot of putting together these meetings and helping to make sure that they're accessible for folks. Like that's actual work that needs to happen, that's like not being part of the decisions. So I think that's a great way for people to help.
Yeah, I definitely would like to help support the people on the committee, but not be the decision maker of the committee, if that makes sense. I think that's a good place for at least some people who haven't received or are in a place of privilege where they really don't represent probably the prevailing relevant opinion.
And I also think it'd be interesting to explore like how we can distribute labor in a way that doesn't come off as too like corporate, if that makes sense. In a way that still like keeps power in like the hands of the people, like, or decision-making power in the hands of people who should have it the most, while also making sure that they're not like bearing more labor than is necessary.
Yeah, totally. All right, any final thoughts? Does anyone have any closing words? Because I don't really, but this was very helpful, and I really appreciate all of you taking time to do this on a Friday. I guess one quick announcement. So tomorrow is the last day of the summit, but there are 3 sessions happening. So tomorrow, it's all the same information for the Zoom, so you can hop on anytime. 11 a.m. Kendra is going to be leading a discussion about the operations, meaning like food and supply distribution and what that's going to look like. At 2 o'clock, we're going to do a housing and eviction session. So Sarah's son and people who are part of the Housing Defense Collective are going to lead that. And then right after that at 3:30, there's going to be a final session to talk about pods. So that'll be the last one of the summit, and we'll hopefully be able to like take all the things we've learned and put them into practice. So really welcome anyone to jump in at any time or to share the link with anyone where we want to see new faces. So yeah, thank you all for coming. And if you want to put any closing words or thoughts in the chat, it would be lovely to see them. And have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Kendra, please go to the ops call.
My shameless hustling. Please come to my.
You made a Google invite that was identical to the one that I made, except yours was in all caps.
Oh wait, I didn't get yours. Did you really make one?
Oh, I just made ones generally like under the mutual.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was just really funny because
I didn't have it on my calendar. It's in all caps. It's like screaming at you. Get into the ops call. Oh goodness. Well, it's got my energy at least.
Yeah, it is good.
I'm excited. Yay. All right, awesome. This is great.
Yeah, I'm really relieved that today's over now.
Me too.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day. Night.